My brothers and sisters, let me ask you a question. How much is your comfort zone worth? I'm not talking how it feels.
Yeah.
I'm talking about what it's costing you, because I promise you the price of comfort is wealth. The price of staying the same is impact, and the fear masquerading as logic is destiny delayed or destroyed. Some of y'all are losing millions, not because God didn't design you for greatness, but because you've gotten real cozy in your cage. You call it being realistic. You call it stability. But let's tell the true thing. It's fear with a nice name tag. Comfort is the enemy of calling. That's not just a catchy phrase. It's a spiritual and practical truth. Every time you choose comfort, you're trading purpose for preference. You're trading divine assignment for personal convenience. And you may not even realize you're doing it, because comfort doesn't always look bad. Sometimes it looks like a good job with a stable paycheck. Sometimes it looks like a routine that's easy to manage. Sometimes it looks like staying in an environment you've already outgrown just because it feels familiar. But familiarity is not the same as alignment. And comfort is not the same as calling. Calling stretches you. It demands something greater. It pulls you out of what you think you can handle and into what only God can empower. And that's why most people ignore their calling. Not because they don't want it, but because they don't want what comes with it. They don't want to be misunderstood. They don't want to be judged. They don't want to be fail. So they shrink. They downplay their gifts. They hide behind routines and excuses. They bury their potential under layers of self-doubt and fear disguised as being realistic. The problem is calling never fits in comfort. They are mutually exclusive. When you say yes to one, you are by default saying no to the other. And many people have been tricked into believing they can fill their calling without discomfort, that they can rise to a level of success without leaving the shore, that they can make impact you without risk. It doesn't work that way. There is no such thing as painless purpose. Every person who has ever done something significant had to break up with comfort to do it. The truth is, your calling is going to offend your comfort. It's going to challenge your self-image. It's going to call out your laziness, your excuses, your procrastination. It's going to make you question what you really believe about God, about money, about yourself. It will test your character, your habits, and your patience. It will ask you to trust when the evidence doesn't line up. It will demand decisions when your emotions want to delay. And this is why so many stay stuck, because the cost of growth is too high for the comfortable. Comfort convinces you to settle. It tells you that average is acceptable. It whispers that survival is anew. It makes mediocrity feel noble. But purpose will always irritate you when you're living beneath your design. They see the strength of you'll feel that tug in your spirit, that knowing that you were made for more, that quiet frustration when you see others stepping into boldness and you're still making excuses, that voice that won't let you rest easy. Even though everything looks fine on the outside, you weren't created for fine. You were created for a fruit, for multiplication, for kingdom level movement. But none of that happens where you're most comfortable. In fact, they see the strength of the comfort will talk you out of movement altogether. It will have you rehearsing what might go wrong before you ever take the first step. It'll have you overthinking, overplanning, and underperforming. Comfort kills momentum. And where there's no momentum, there's no manifestation. The hard truth is this in your comfort zone has a ceiling, and it's far lower than your potential. As long as you stay there, you'll keep bumping your head against limitations that were never meant to define you. You'll keep watching other people pass you by, not because they're better, but because they're smarter, but because they were willing to move. They were willing to feel the fear and obey the call anyway. Your safety net is strangling your success. What you think is protecting you is actually preventing you. Most people don't realize this because safety feels smart. It feels responsible. It feels like the right thing to do. You were taught to build something secure to avoid necessary risks, to play it safe so you won't fall. And for a time, that made sense. When you didn't know who you were, when you hadn't tapped into your assignment, when you were still learning discipline and maturity, the safety net served a purpose. But what once protected you is now restricting you. There comes a moment when your safety net becomes your limitation. You start building your entire life around not falling instead of focusing on how high you can go. You make decisions from a place of fear rather than faith. You choose predictability over possibility. And without realizing it, you trap yourself in a cycle of playing small. You avoid big moves because you don't want to lose the little you've accumulated. You cling to stability so tightly that you squeeze the life out of your dreams. You confuse preservation with purpose, and that confusion is costing you. A safety net isn't bad in itself. The issue is when you build your identity around it, when your job title becomes your self-worth, when your monthly income becomes your confidence, when your routine becomes your excuse to stop evolving. That's when the net stops being safety and starts becoming a snare. It holds you in place. It keeps you dependent. It discourages risk. And risk is required for growth. If you never risk anything, you'll never create anything significant. Every successful person you admire had to let go of their net. They had to leap when it didn't make sense. They had to move when others told them to wait. They had to trust something bigger than what they could control. But what separates those who build empires from those who stay stuck is not talent, not education, not background. It's the willingness to step out without a guarantee. Because success does not live inside your safety net. It lives in the realm of uncertainty, in the territory of faith, in the tension of discomfort. Your safety net is made of stories you tell yourself. They see the strength, leave this job because it pays the bills. I can't launch this idea because it's not the right time. I can't take that risk because I have responsibilities. But every one of those stories is wrapped in fear. You've convinced yourself you're being wise, but deep down you're avoiding the unknown. You're afraid of failure, of judgment, of losing control. And while you're protecting yourself from loss, you're also blocking yourself from gain. You're protecting a version of life that no longer fits the size of your vision. The scariest part, the longer you stay in the net, the more normal it feels. You stop dreaming altogether. You stop challenging yourself. You stop hearing the voice that once called you to more because the noise of comfort drowns it out. You surround yourself with people who validate your safety, who applaud your caution, who call it wisdom when it's really just fear in disguise. And before you know it, you're living a small, safe life applauded by safe people. Success requires risk, movement, decision, boldness. You can't reach higher ground while clinging to the old level. You can't cross into overflow while obsessed with preserving just enough. You're building fences around your potential in the name of protection. And those fences are turning into walls. Walls that block you from opportunities, from wealth, from impact. Walls that were never meant to exist. Walls built not from failure, but from comfort. You can't multiply with a maintenance mindset. The mindset that keeps things running is not the mindset that creates exponential growth. Maintenance is about survival. It's about preserving what you have, keeping things from falling apart, avoiding disruption. But multiplication requires vision. It requires strategy, creativity, boldness, and a willingness to break the very systems that once worked in order to build something greater. Most people were trained to think in terms of maintenance. From the time they were children, they were taught how to get by, how to find something that works, stick with it, and avoid messing it up. They were told be grateful for the little they had, to play it safe, to not ask for too much. So now, as adults, they carry that same mindset into their finances, their businesses, their relationships, their dreams. They see the strength of, they're not thinking about to multiply anything. They're thinking about how to keep the lights on and make sure things don't collapse, how to avoid taking a loss. But you were not designed just to maintain. You were designed to multiply. There is nothing about your assignment that suggests smallness or stagnation. But if you're stuck in maintenance mode, you won't even recognize multiplication when the opportunity shows up. You see the strength though. You'll think it's a risk. You'll think it's irresponsible. You talk yourself out of it and call it wisdom. But what you're really doing is operating from fear, and fear always chokes multiplication. The problem with a maintenance mindset is that it's reactive instead of proactive. It waits for problems before it makes moves. It waits for confirmation before it takes a leap. It needs evidence before it will obey vision. That's not how multiplication works. Multiplication moves first. It invests before the return shows up. It sows in faith. It builds with a blueprint that hasn't fully manifested yet. It takes the raw material and starts forming the outcome before anyone else sees the value in it. When you look at every major wealth builder, every entrepreneur, innovator, or leader who has multiplied anything of value, you'll notice did something radical. They stopped maintaining what was and started building what could be. They shifted their energy from just managing systems to creating new ones. They let go of the fear of loss and embraced the possibility of gain. That mindset shift didn't come without discomfort. It didn't come without tension. But it came with a decision to stop thinking like a caretaker and start thinking like a creator. The maintenance mindset also creates a ceiling. It can only grow so much before it plashes. You can optimize a small system for years and never create true wealth. That's because you're busy refining instead of multiplying. You're managing pennies instead of building pipelines. You're watching over what you have instead of opening doors to what you could have. And because maintenance feels safe, it becomes a trap. You don't realize you've stopped building. You just think you're being responsible. There's nothing responsible about wasting potential. There's nothing noble about shrinking vision. If you have the ability to multiply, but you're choosing to maintain, you're operating below your design. Wealth isn't just about stacking money. It's about building systems that keep creating value long after you've stopped working. But that requires a multiplication mindset, one that sees beyond today, that takes calculated risks, that sees investment as obedience and growth as a mandate. Multiplication demands you stop thinking like an employee and start thinking like an owner. Owners don't maintain, they scale. They don't ask what's the least I can do, keep this going. They ask what systems can I build so this grows without me. That shift right there is the difference between having a little money now and building a legacy that lasts. Fear disguised as logic will bankrupt your destiny. It doesn't always show up loud or obvious. Sometimes it sounds like reason. It sounds like wisdom. It wears a suit and tie. It quotes statistics. It talks about timing. They see the strength of and it always has a good excuse. But underneath all of that logic is one thing: fear. Fear that things won't work out, that you'll be judged. Fear that you'll lose what you've built. Fear that you're not enough. And when fear is in the driver's seat, it doesn't matter how rational it sounds. It's still steering you away from the life you were created to live. People miss their assignment not because they're lazy, but because they let fear put on a mask called being realistic. They say things like, now's not the right time, or I just need to plan a little more, or I have responsibilities. And yes, responsibilities matter. Planning is smart. Timing has value. But when those things become permanent delays, it's not logic anymore. It's fear pretending to be wise. It's hesitation dressed up as discernment. And that's where destinies get derailed. The thing about fear is it will always find a reason to say no. It will always find a reason to hold back. Even when doors open, fear will tell you it's too risky to walk through. Even when opportunity is right in front of you, fear will tell you it's better to wait. You'll convince yourself you need more confirmation. You'll overanalyze and overplan until the window closes, and you'll call it logic. You'll tell yourself you were just being careful. But the truth is, you let fear make the final decision. Fear will calculate every possible way things could go wrong, but it will never factor in what happens if they go right. They see this doesn't calculate the power of favor. It doesn't understand calling, acknowledge divine timing. Fear only operates in the realm of control. If it can't control it, it doesn't trust it. And yet, everything great in your life, the biggest breakthroughs, the most impactful decisions, the shifts that changed everything, none of that came from control. It came from courage. It came from stepping forward without all the answers. Logic, when led by vision, is powerful. But logic, when led by fear, is dangerous. It creates a life that looks responsible on the outside but feels empty on the inside. You end up building systems that protect you from failure but also prevent you from success. You stay in places you've outgrown because you've convinced yourself it's safer to shrink than to stretch. You spend years waiting for clarity that only comes after you move. And in the meantime, your destiny waits, untouched, unclaimed, unused. The saddest part is most people never realized they were operating in fear. They think they were being mature. They think they were just counting the cost. But what they were really doing was negotiating with destiny. They were asking their comfort zone for permission to grow. And that will never work. Your destiny requires decisions that logic alone can't make. It requires faith, not blind faith, but bold faith. Faith that is informed, but not intimidated. Faith that says, I see the facts, but I follow vision. A fear will always offer you a backup plan. It will always try to give you an exit. It will tell you to stay where it's safe, to avoid making waves, to not risk what you've already built. But what it won't tell you is that the real risk is staying stuck. The real risk is ignoring the assignment on your life. The real risk is building a life that looks good but doesn't align with your purpose. That's the cost of letting fear run your logic. Small thinking guarantees small results. It's not just a mindset issue, it's a harvest issue. You will never receive beyond what you can see. If your vision is limited, your outcomes will be too. If your belief is capped, so is your potential. Small thinking builds boxes around your future. It creates ceilings that God never put there. It convinces you that enough to get by is all you should ask for. And over time, you become more committed to managing limitation than pursuing expansion. Small thinking it doesn't scream failure, it whispers comfort. It tells you that aiming higher is greedy. That doing more is unnecessary. That dreaming big is unrealistic. It talks you out of bold moves by reminding you of past stakes. It highlights your weaknesses and magnifies your insecurities. And slowly it conditions you to accept average as destiny. The real danger of small thinking isn't just in what it stops you from doing. It's in what it causes you to settle for. You begin to shrink your desires so you won't be disappointed. You begin to surround yourself with people who validate limitation, and eventually you confuse playing it safe with wisdom. The truth is most people aren't limited lack. They're limited by lens. They're not missing resources. They're missing revelation. The idea is relationships and opportunities they need already exist, but they can't see them through the filter of small thinking. That filter edits everything. It tells them what's possible and what's not. It distorts how they see themselves and how they see the world. And because they've internalized those limits, they never pursue the next level. They wait for evidence instead of acting on vision. They ask for permission from fear before moving in faith. Small thinking makes you a prisoner to your past. It defines you by what you've seen, not what you're called to build. It uses the facts of your history to argue against the truth of your potential. It will take your failures and present them as forecasts. It will take your lack and present as identity. And if you're not intentional, you'll start designing your entire life around what seems safe rather than what is possible. You'll avoid risks that could change everything just to protect an image that means nothing. You weren't created to live small. You weren't designed to just survive. You weren't called to build a life that fits comfortably within human expectation. You were wired for greatness, for expansion, for dominion. See the strength of but none of that can activate while you're still negotiating with fear and calling it humility. There's nothing humble about hiding. There's nothing wise about wasting potential. Playing small doesn't serve anyone. It just delays the impact you were meant to create. If you think small, you'll plan small, act small, and you'll produce small. That's not a strategy. It's sabotage. Small thinking doesn't just affect your results, it becomes your reputation. People start to know you as the one who plays it safe, as the one who talks big but moves slow, as the one who never quite steps into what they say they believe. And over time, that gap between your language and your life creates frustration, not because you don't know what's possible, because you keep settling for less. Every time you shrink your thinking, you shrink your access. You limit who you can partner with, what you can pursue, and what kind of solutions you can even recognize. Your level of thinking determines what you attract. If your thoughts are bound to survival, you'll repel abundance. If your thoughts are consumed with scarcity, you'll reject opportunity even when it shows up dressed as favor. You can't manifest overflow from a mindset rooted in lack. Legacy requires discomfort and decisive action. It does not happen by accident, and it does not come without sacrifice. Legacy is not about what you leave behind. It's about what you build while you're here. It's the result of intentional choices, bold movements, and uncomfortable decisions made over and over again. The kind of decisions that stretch you, challenge you, and demand more than you thought you had to give. Legacy doesn't grow in comfort zones. It grows in moments of pressure, in seasons of transition, and in steps of obedience when the outcome is unclear. Most people want to be remembered, but they don't want to be uncomfortable. They want the impact without the inconvenience. They want to be known for excellence, but they're addicted to ease. They want to build wealth, but they won't part with familiarity. Legacy requires you to let go of what's comfortable so you can take hold of what's eternal. And that process is rarely smooth. It requires you to confront everything in you that prefers safety over significance. It forces you to go beyond what you've done before, to become who you've never been before, in order to create something that outlives you. Discomfort is the soil where legacy takes root. Every move that matters will stretch you. They see the strength of you. You'll do things you've never done. You'll have to have conversations that feel awkward. You'll have to make investments that feel risky. You'll have to walk away from good to make room for great. And all of that comes with resistance, internal resistance, external resistance, even spiritual resistance. But none of that resistance is a sign that you're off track. It's a sign that you're disrupting patterns and rewriting generational narratives. Legacy is bigger than income. It's bigger than titles. It's about impact. It's about what continues after you're no longer in the room. And the decisions that create kind of influence are rarely convenient. They require discipline when no one is watching. They require consistency when the results are delayed. They require courage when everything in you wants to retreat. The legacy builders don't get to coast. They move forward when it's hard. They act when it's uncomfortable. They decide even when there's doubt. Decisive action is what separates those who dream from those who build. A lot of people have vision. A lot of people have ideas. But vision without action is a fantasy. Legacy is built by the ones who act, who move when others hesitate, who commit when others overthink. The ones who understand that clarity often comes after commitment. That momentum doesn't show up before the move. It's created by the move. If you wait until everything is perfect, you've already disqualified yourself from legacy. Because legacy isn't built in ideal conditions. It's built in the mess and the unknown, in the middle of transition and tension. Legacy requires urgency. Not panic, but purpose-driven urgency. A mindset that says, I don't have time to waste on doubt. I don't have time to delay out of fear. I don't have time to stay where it's easy when I'm called to go where it's effective. That urgency drives action. They see the strength of it. It pushes you to launch when you're unsure. It compels you to speak when you're nervous. It dares you to invest when the return isn't guaranteed. That kind of movement is what births legacy, not because you had it all figured out, but because you moved in faith and let your discipline carry what your feelings couldn't. If you're waiting for the right season to start building your legacy, you've already missed the moment. Legacy isn't built later, it's built now. In your daily decisions, in your private disciplines, and how you handle discomfort, pressure, and uncertainty, every time you act with intention, every time you choose growth over ease, every time you say yes to purpose over preference, you're building legacy.